All right. So if you have the same book I do, that would be page 155. It looks like this. If you have that one. Some people have a different version, but that's okay. It's somewhere around the same place. Okay. Uncertainty. The greatest mistake a man can make is to be afraid of making one. Elbert Hubbard says uncertainty is a way of avoiding mistakes and responsibility. It is based on the fallacious premise that if no decision is made, nothing can go wrong. Being wrong holds untold horrors to the person who tries to conceive of himself as perfect. He's never wrong and always perfect in all things. If he were ever wrong, his picture of a perfect, all-powerful self would crumble. Therefore, decision-making becomes a life or death matter. This one's particularly important for me because I'm the perfectionist at heart. I don't know how many of you feel the same way. Even beginning something new and having the feeling of being a noob is nerve-wracking, like looking stupid. I hated that growing up, so it definitely held me back on more than one occasion. One way is to avoid as many decisions as possible and prolong them as much as possible. Another way is to have a handy scapegoat to blame. This type of person makes decisions, but he makes them hastily, prematurely, and is well known for going off half-cocked. Making decisions offers him no problem at all. He is perfect. It is impossible for him to be wrong in any case. Therefore, why consider facts or consequences? He's able to maintain this fiction when his decisions backfire, simply by convincing himself it was someone else's fault. It's easy to see why both types fail. One is continually in hot water for impulsive and ill-considered actions. The other stymied because he will not act at all. In other words, the uncertainty way of being right doesn't work. It says nobody is right all the time. Realize that it does not require that a man be 100% right at all times. No baseball batter has ever had a 1,000 average. If he's right 3 times out of 10, he's considered good. The great Babe Ruth, who held the record for the most home runs for many years, also held the record for the most strikeouts. It is in the nature of things that we progress by acting, making mistakes, and correcting course. A guided torpedo literally arrives at its target by making a series of mistakes and continually correcting its course. You cannot correct your course if you are standing still. You cannot change or correct nothing. You must consider the known facts in a situation. Imagine possible consequences of various courses of action and choose one that seems to offer the best solution and be on it. You can correct your course as you go. It says, only little men are never wrong. Another help in overcoming uncertainty is to realize the role that self-esteem and the protection of self-esteem play in indecisiveness. Many people are indecisive because they fear loss of self-esteem if they're proved wrong. Use self-esteem for yourself instead of against yourself by convincing yourself of this truth. Big men and big personalities make mistakes and admit them. It's the little man who's afraid to admit that he's been wrong. So that's a one good ego shot if you're one of the people that has these insecurities. And then there's 2 quotes here. We'll read them. No man ever became great or good except through many and great mistakes. William E. Gladstone. And then he says another one here by Sir Humphrey Davy. I have learned more from my mistakes than from my successes. And then we have one by Samuel Smile. We learn wisdom from failure much more than from success. We often discover what we'll do by finding out what we'll not do. And probably B, who never made a mistake. What the hell? And probably B, who never made a mistake, never made a discovery. Oh, okay. Old English, huh? We have a last one by Thomas Edison. Mr. Edison worked endlessly on a problem using the method of elimination. If a person asked him whether he were discouraged because so many attempts proved unavailing, he would say, no, I'm not discouraged because every wrong attempt discarded is another step forward. That's a great way to look at things. And then we're moving on to resentment, unless somebody got something to say for that portion. Anybody?
It never ceases to amaze me how many people just won't admit that they don't know something.
Yeah, perfectionist, ego. I think
it's more to do with ego than anything. Like,
yeah.
I should have the answers. Well, you don't always have the answers.
Yeah. Well, that's you have the perfectionist, lens of yourself in your imagined, little ego, and there's no way you could possibly be wrong. I mean, clearly you know more, obviously, and it's that false sense of confidence that actually completely blocks you from making like massive gains or growth in your life because you can't even accurately judge what you're capable of. It's you're living in a form of delusion. But I think this section is more for the dudes that can't even start, like to make a decision in general. For example, say starting a business is on a lot of men's minds. Like imagine the guy is so uncertain about the success, uncertain about the first step, just uncertain about confidence in himself. Is he capable? Does he have the the God-given gift to even make it? Can he withstand blah, 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 this and that? I mean, you make up a bunch of scenarios in your head that will stop you from even starting, and nothing's even happened yet. It's all imagination. It's crazy how the brain works like that. You'll literally imagine 1,000 scenarios how you'll fail, but not the one way you could succeed. And then you discourage yourself from even starting. It's wild, man, that some people operate on this baseline mentality, and then they end up not doing shit in life, and then they end up resenting, which is the next one, resenting a bunch of people around them that are successful. This is why you tend to have a lot of people that you share your success with, even the closest ones among you, will resent you for it, either secretly or outright. It's because of that insecurity that you're hitting deep in their ego. Okay, next one, resentment. When the failure type personality looks for a scapegoat or excuse for his failure, he often blames society, the system, life, the breaks. He resents the success and happiness of others because it's proof to him that life is shortchanging him and he is being treated unfairly. Resentment is an attempt to make our own failure palatable by explaining it in terms of unfair treatment, injustice. And I know a bunch of people. I know a bunch of people that were around me I consider friends that were just like this. You have to get rid of them. But as a salve for failure, resentment is a cure that is worse than the disease. It is a deadly poison to the spirit, makes happiness impossible, uses up tremendous energy that could go into accomplishment. A vicious cycle is often set up. The person who always carries a grievance and has a chip on his shoulder does not make the best companion or coworker. When coworkers do not warm up to him, or the boss attempts to point out deficiencies in his work, he has additional reasons for feeling resentful. These people cannot take any criticism whatsoever, and it could be coming from the best place imaginable, like you're the brother, you're the friend, like the best friend, and you're just trying to help, the person you care about out. And I've had that happen to me where it backfired completely because it seemed to them like it was a personal attack when it was the furthest thing from that. I was trying to help them, but it'll backfire on you tremendously. So be very careful about even just what you would consider a positive critique against someone that is close to you. The resentment, they either will show it outright or they'll harbor it against you later on. So better to be quiet. If they ask you for something, try to let them down easy. Most people's egos can't handle it. Or get new friends that can. That's always the answer. Resentment is a way that fails. It says resentment is also a way of making us feel important. Many people get a perverse satisfaction from feeling wronged. The victim of injustice, the one who's been unfairly treated, is morally superior to those who caused the injustice. Resentment is also a way or an attempt to wipe out or eradicate a real or fancied wrong or injustice that has already happened. The resentful person is trying to prove his case before the court of life, so to speak. If he can feel resentful enough and thereby prove the injustice, some magic process will reward him by making not so the event or circumstance that caused the resentment. In this sense, resentment is a mental resistance to a non-acceptance of something which already has happened. The word itself comes from two Latin words, re meaning back and sentire meaning to feel. Resentment is an emotional rehashing or refighting of some event in the past. You cannot win because you're attempting to do the impossible, change the past. That's an excellent way to put that into perspective for everybody here in the room listening.
There are so many people in the world that are just very heavy into that mindset.
Yeah, it's sad actually. It's sad. It's saddest when it's your own family. That's the one that hurts the most. And then we got resentment creates Say again?
What can we do to family members who are stubborn, aren't humble too?
It's not your job to change them. You can't. There's nothing.
Lead by example. You can't change them.
Exactly. You can't change anything and you can't bring up anything. You just have to just say, okay, discard their opinion and move on forward one step in front of the other for yourself. You can only have them come around to the idea of listening to what you have to say and take it seriously after they see you accomplish whatever it is that you're doing. So until you prove to them, which is by you doing it on your own, they won't want to hear anything you have to say. It'll come off as a critique. And even then, it's not guaranteed that they want to listen to you. Just know that the resentment can be there by you simply becoming successful in their eyes, which then in turn is a shot at their ego because they compare your success with their failure. And so they, instead of bettering themselves, rather hate you for that, for making them feel that way. So again, not your job.
Yeah, it's like becomes a polar opposite reflection of everything they're not doing, and they know
you're
they're
a reminder.
Not doing. So it's not really a critique; they take it as a criticism.
Exactly. You're a walking
They
reminder.
try to find arbitrary things about you that prove that you were just successful because of that thing, and they try to find something arbitrary about themselves to prove that that's why they failed.
Yeah, like, oh, you got
Pretty
lucky.
much.
That's one you'll hear a lot. Oh, you just got lucky. It was luck. It wasn't the hard work. It wasn't the dedication. It wasn't the day by day. It was just luck, bro. It's just good timing. Oh, you got lucky. The market was hot. Blah, blah, blah. It's all bullshit. And then we got resentment creates an inferior self-image. Resentment, even when based on real injustice and wrongs, is not the way to win. It soon becomes an emotional habit. Habitually feeling that you're a victim of injustice, you begin to picture yourself in the role of a victimized person. You carry around an inner feeling that is looking for an external peg to hang itself on. It is then easy to see so-called evidence of injustice or fancy you've been wronged in the most innocent remark or neutral circumstance. Habitual resentment invariably leads to self-pity, which is the worst possible emotional habit anyone can develop. When these habits have become firmly ensconced, a person does not feel right or natural when resentments are absent. They then literally begin to search for and look for injustices. Someone has said that such people feel good only when they are miserable. So this will explain Karens and cat ladies in their 40s or 50s, by the way.
I know many people like that.
Yeah.
They
insane.
they're literally not happy unless they're pissed off about something.
Yeah. Emotional habits of resentment and self-pity also go with an infective, inferior self-image. You begin to picture yourself as a pitiful person, a victim who was meant to be unhappy. And then you develop the crabs in a bucket mentality. That's why women in their 40s or 50s whose life passed by and they made all the wrong decisions and ended up alone and no man wants them, all that stuff. That's why they give out the worst advice. They tell women to never go near men, to decenter them and all those other woke terms. It's because they themselves can't claw back the consequences. And instead of being lonely, bitter, angry by themselves, they want to bring everybody else with them too. It's crazy.
Misery loves company.
It's the same with drinking, actually. Like once you stop drinking and hang out with the same people, they will try to pressure you into drinking with them again.
Oh, yes. I had that problem actually in college when I wanted to quit drinking after a bender on one night that I woke up puking my guts out and I gave up alcohol. Actually, since then, pretty much I never binge drank anymore. And I think I may have had a few drinks months after, but pretty much kicked the habit completely. And all my friends were major alcoholics, I guess you call them, super dependent on liquor just to go out and have a good time. Like if they didn't have a drink in their hands, it was impossible. And obviously these people will feel so fucking insecure if you're not, if you don't have a drink in your hand with them. They think you're too good. Like, and that's what they were telling me. Like, oh, about what are you, all a fucking saint now? Like they start talking shit. Like, oh, look at this guy, dude, church boy over here. He doesn't drink anymore. Oh my God. Like they'll start talking a lot of shit simply because I don't want alcohol anymore and I don't need it. And I would tell them like, I don't need that shit. I don't need to get fucked up when we go out to have a good time. You know, like you may be nervous, you may have anxiety and you need to loosen up with some liquor, but I don't. You know, it doesn't make me feel good the next day. So I rather chill sober and babysit like a cranberry fucking juice. And it looks like a drink. Is that going to make you fucking happy? You know, but it's the fact that they're dependent on the alcohol and they need it and you don't, is again that direct contrast with their ego that shows that they're failures. And you've made no comments about it. Just I'm not drinking tonight. I'm good, guys. Immediately, dude, the insecurity comes out and then the resentment, and then you can't hang around these people because all they literally want to do is get fucked up. So it's an interesting one too. Let's see, slightly down, and habitual resentment leads to self-pity. Is that where I was at? No. Okay. The real cause of resentment. Remember that your resentment is not caused by other persons, events, or circumstances. It is caused by your own emotional response, your own reaction. You alone have power over this, and you can control it if you firmly convince yourself that resentment and self-pity are not ways to happiness and success, but ways to defeat and unhappiness. As long as you harbor resentment, it's literally impossible for you to picture yourself as a self-reliant, independent, self-determining person who is the captain of his soul, the master of his fate. The resentful person turns over his reins to other people. They're allowed to dictate how he shall feel, how he shall act. He is wholly dependent on other people, just as a beggar is. He makes unreasonable demands and claims on other people. If everyone else would be should be dedicated to making you happy, you will be resentful when it doesn't work out that way. If you feel that other people owe you eternal gratitude, undying appreciation, or continual recognition of your superlative worth, you will feel resentment when these debts are not paid. If life owes you a living, you become resentful when it isn't forthcoming. Resentment is therefore inconsistent with creative goal striving. In creative goal striving, you are the actor, not the passive recipient. You set your goals. No one owes you anything. You go out after your own goals. You become responsible for your own success and happiness. Resentment doesn't fit into this picture. And because it doesn't, it is a failure mechanism. Okay, so I can't really relate with the resentment stuff internally. I've never really had a resentment for people. I've always seeing wealthy people makes others resentful. I've always been in awe at seeing somebody in a really nice car, especially when I was a little kid and someone drives by in like a supercar. And the questions in my head were immediate, like, how did they do it? And wow, this person is so cool and I want to be like them. And even into adulthood, I felt the same way. Like, how did they do that? Where was their step one like? I wanted to learn their ways, but other people will take that same exact scenario and immediately resent it. Like, why the fuck do they deserve that car? Like, oh, they're probably criminals. Like, oh, they probably got lucky. Oh, it's their parents' money. It's a blah, blah, blah. Dude, it goes on and on and on. Imagine having that as the default way you think. How could this person start a business?
I couldn't even imagine it.
Yeah. How could this person start a business? How could this person self-improve? How could this person learn any good hobbies? How could they be charismatic? How? With that is your foundational start to every thought in your brain.
How could you just live an existence that miserable?
I don't know. Again, it explains you've conditioned yourself to feel like you have to be the person that's wronged, right? So then now the only way you feel anything is when everywhere you look, you self-confirm, right? It's the confirmation bias that, yeah, life has fucked me over. That guy has a Ferrari, and you get to complain because complaining feels good, right? It's a little hit of dopamine or whatever, not even dopamine, whatever other brain chemical that complaining may give you, I'm sure it's one of them, but it feels good.
I'm kind of glad I graduated. I'm glad I graduated when I did, because I felt like the whole atmosphere of high school was kind of pushing me in that direction pretty heavy, not gonna lie.
What was it specifically that was doing that?
Well, it was more along the lines of, I went to the smaller high school in the district, so we didn't have a lot of stuff. So the teachers would always be complaining, oh, I wish I worked at this high school. Oh, we don't have the new equipment. Well, we wish we had this, blah, 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 blah. And they were always constantly complaining about not having proper material, despite it being their job to actually, teach despite the material.
Yeah.
And so, when I was younger, I would always go in and see some really cool thing or whatever, like this massive house, be like, ooh, that'd be super cool. I wonder how I get to, that point.
Yeah.
But then in high school, after, having it conditioned to me that all the adults around me are constantly complaining about everything, I was starting to move in that direction.
It rubs off on you. It's sick, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's infectious, like you were
a
saying
disease.
earlier in the paragraph. You have to, that's why I say, I want to do an episode on this sometime later, but your environment, the people you hang around with, those two things matter greatly to your creative mechanism, your ability to have good thoughts and string them into good actions. I cannot stand being in an environment I hate or being around any negative people. They zap all the brain power out of me immediately. So it's key, absolutely key. For the younger guys that can't afford to live out on their own, I understand you may be living with less than ideal family, and I understand you're living under some rules that are less ideal in the household. Perhaps you want to eat clean, or perhaps you need some peace to do something, or perhaps you just don't even have the funds to attempt to do some side hobby, or you're being forced to do something, God knows, who knows, whatever it is, the rules in the house. I get it. You just are playing on a bit of a handicap and have to somehow train your brain to understand that this situation is temporary and one day you will be free. The harder you work, the faster you get to be free. And that's the only way you can pretty much mentally let that play out, so that you can get motivated enough day in and day out to get out of there, because it will get easier for you, for the young guys. Living on your own is a blessing. And once you become financially independent, or stable, I should say, that's when your life kind of truly begins, when you have infinite paths in front of you that you can take, and whatever direction you want to go, you're free. There's nothing anchoring you down. The only thing that'll hold you back is your own discipline, your own, motivation to go forward and believe in yourself, the faith you have in your plan. And that's it, man. If you can imagine it, you can turn it into reality. Just believe in yourself, have faith, and trust your process. Okay. Emptiness. This is the next one. Perhaps as you read this chapter, you thought of someone who had been successful in spite of frustration, misdirected aggressiveness, and resentment, etc. But do not be too sure. Many people acquire the outward symbols of success, but when they go to open the long sought for treasure chest, they find it empty. It is as if the money they have strained so hard to attain turns to counterfeit in their hands. Along the way, they lost the capacity to enjoy. This is the process we're talking about. And when you have lost the capacity to enjoy, no amount of wealth or anything else can bring success or happiness. These people win the nut of success, but when they crack it open, it's empty. So by the way, when I say trust the process and enjoy the process, is very important, because one day you will arrive at the end point, and I guarantee you the feeling you get from whatever it is, the goal, the overarching goal that you're trying to reach, the happiness you're going to derive from that is very small, guys. I'm telling you, it's almost minuscule, nothing to even be remembered. The things you'll actually remember most is the hardest times in your life throughout that process you were undergoing to get to where you are at the end stage. I remember being in my car, like tears running down my face. I don't have any fucking money in my account. The government just denied my student loans. I had to be set back for an entire semester. You know, I'm in another state across the country, and I'm just sitting in my car like, how the fuck am I going to make this happen? I'm on the verge of losing everything. I remember moments like that. Moments like that were crazy, crawling back from shit like that. Remembering when I, had 3 jobs plus a full-time schedule and then some, an extra 2 classes just to catch up on the missed semester, and I had so many work hours that I couldn't even do homework. There was no time in the day to do homework, and my grades were slipping from A to C's. And even then I knew that these 3 part-time jobs were bullshit. So I was applying everywhere. And I finally got hired as a bartender, which paid more through tips than all 3 of those jobs combined, and taught me like invaluable skills, like talking, charisma, being relaxed around people, strangers, whatever, So all to say, everything you do from this point on forward, it'll be the times you hate will be the most memorable. Once you get to the end, it's just like that scene in Avengers, where he's just like, what is his name? What's that dude's name in Avengers? The bad guy? You forget his name. Where he's sitting down after he wiped out half the universe. Thanos. Yes. Where he's sitting on his little farm and shit, where he just plucked a few fruits. And it's just like he's at the end stage of everything. And that's kind of what the feeling's like. You just get to look out at everything you've acquired, everything you've accomplished, and you just breathe a sigh of relief like, wow, I can't believe I made it here. But that feeling is inconsequential compared to the actual journey you had to get to this point. So when I say enjoy the process, that's what I mean. Even the hard times, because you're going to look back, dude, and that'll be the only memory you have left. Emptiness. Oh yeah, we're already there. A person who has the capacity to enjoy, still alive within him, finds enjoyment in many ordinary and simple things in life. And by the way, once you reach your end goal, you have to create another goal on top of that. So this is never ending. Don't ever have the mentality in your head that you can, quote, retire one day, or that there's a finish line. That'll be the end of you. You're going to become depressed.
Just another set of problems, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's one goal that will take you maybe half your lifetime to reach, but once you've reached it, you create another one and another one. You're a machine, and you just strive for goals, and that's it. That's how you have to think of yourself. There's no such thing as I get to be retired, relaxed, sitting on my ass. That's why so many men, insurance companies know this, that when they retire, they usually live 5 more years and then die. Most men do.
Yeah, because like once life stopped coming at you, you don't have to spend every waking minute to pay the bills or whatever. Then you actually have to face the question of like purpose and stuff.
Then it says he also enjoys whatever success in a material way he has achieved. The person whom the capacity to enjoy is dead can find enjoyment in nothing. No goal is worth working for. Life is a terrible bore. Nothing is worthwhile. You can see these people by the hundreds, night after night, knocking themselves out in nightclubs, trying to convince themselves they're enjoying it. They travel from place to place, become entangled in a whirl of parties, hoping to find enjoyment, always finding an empty shell. The truth is that joy is an accompaniment of creative function, of creative goal striving. It is possible to win a fake success, but when you do, you're penalized with an empty joy. Life becomes worthwhile when you have worthwhile goals. Emptiness is a symptom that you are not living creatively. You either have no goal that is important enough to you, or you're not using your talents and efforts in striving toward an important goal. It is the person who has no purpose of his own who pessimistically concludes life has no purpose. It is the person who has no goal worth working for who concludes life is not worthwhile. It is the person with no important job to do who complains there's nothing to do. The individual who is actively engaged in a struggle or in striving toward an important goal does not come up with pessimistic philosophies concerning the meaningless or futility of life. That's a big one there. Burn that one in your brain. Emptiness is not a way that wins. Failure mechanism is self-perpetuating unless we step in and break the vicious cycle. Emptiness, when once experienced, can become a way of avoiding work, effort, and responsibility. It becomes an excuse or a justification for non-creative living. If all is vanity, if there is no new thing under the sun, if there is no joy to be found anyway, why bother? Why try? If life is just a treadmill, if we work 8 hours a day so we can afford a house to sleep in, so we can sleep 8 hours to become rested for another day's work, why get excited about it? All these intellectual, quote, reasons vanish. However, and we do experience joy and satisfaction when, once we get off the treadmill, stop going around and around in circles and select some goal worth striving for and go for it. So this is kind of like the way in the cringy side of people saying, follow your heart, in a way that is correct. Sounds very stupid to say, but the real meaning behind that is a goal worth striving for, something that you deem important, and that's what you should be going after. Emptiness as an inadequate self-image go together. Emptiness may also be the symptom of an inadequate self-image. It is impossible to psychologically accept something that you feel does not belong to you or is not consistent with yourself. The person who holds an unworthy or undeserving self-image may hold his negative tendencies in check long enough to achieve a genuine success, then be unable to accept it psychologically and enjoy it. You may even feel guilty about it as if he had stolen it. His negative self-image may even spur such a person on to achievement by the well-known principle of overcompensation. But I do not subscribe to the theory that one should be proud of his inferiority complex or thankful for it, because it sometimes leads to the external symbols of success. When success finally comes, such a person feels little sense of satisfaction or accomplishment. He's unable to take credit in his own mind for his accomplishments. To the world, he's a success. He himself still feels inferior, undeserving, almost as if he were a thief and had stolen the status symbol that he thought were so important. If my friends and associates really knew what a phony I am, he will say. This reaction is so common that psychiatrists refer to it as the success syndrome. The man who feels guilty, insecure, anxious when he realizes he has succeeded. This is the reason that success has become a bad word. Real success never hurt anyone. It is healthy to strive for goals that are important to you, not as status symbols, but because they're consistent with your own deep inner want. Striving for real success, for your success, through creative accomplishment brings a deep inner satisfaction. Striving for a phony success to please others brings a phony satisfaction. Okay. And
Dude, that one kicks my ass so bad.
Really? How do you relate with this one?
So anytime that I'm fencing and I do something new and it works, it feels wrong. I don't exactly know how to convey that with words, but like, for example, my fencing coach, every once in a while I'll go in and I want to test myself where I'm at the time. And so I'll fence him because he's a pretty good judge of that kind of stuff. And, he'll praise me on some things. He'll tell me some things that I need to work on. But then it's like any time that he winds up saying that, like, I've gotten better at any one particular thing, I just kind of think of it as like, one, I don't feel better, and two, I don't think I deserve to be better. Kind of internally, I don't like actively think the second part. It just doesn't feel right that I get better.
That's because of number one.
So,
right? You just don't feel like you got better, so you invalidate number two. It makes sense. A little more deep in your psyche, you just think that you're not good at fencing in some way, or you don't allow yourself to think you've improved, for whatever reason, some deep-seated reason, so that when you're actually getting better, you yourself can't even see it, although everybody else around you can. Yeah, some work to do on that one, but you are getting better if your coach said so. So that's
yeah. Can I jump in for a second?
Shattering fact there. Go ahead.
Also consider bending the knee, Caleb. Like, don't trust you, trust your coach. Sometimes you need to give up on yourself and let go and listen to others. So if he says you're better, you got to just smack it in your head. You got to relax and listen to your coach. Obey and cooperate. Take the order. Be a good follower. Don't be so cocky as to knock off what your master tells you. That's a normal martial art process, is to cooperate and flow. So as long as he's not abusing you or something like that, don't always trust your mind, because your mind comes up with things that are incorrect all the time. So when you meditate, you realize you're wrong half the time. And so you learn not to trust every one of your thoughts unless it's really, really well demonstrated to be true. So you're not trusting your teacher. You are trusting yourself on this process. So consider just swapping it and trusting your teacher for a little bit. Yeah, that's another way to get through that.
Well put.
All right, cool.
All right.
You mind if I just jump in real quick on?
Please.
Yeah, I train jiu-jitsu, and I noticed a similar attitude where there's a fine line between confidence and humility, and you have to sort of balance that out. And that negative self-talk, I noticed for me, it was something in my childhood where I never got any compliments or validation from my parents. You know, my parents were never like, "Hey, good job for this." I'm from an Indian family, and unless it was academic related, they would never say, "Oh, good job for this trophy, good job for this." And I found it really hard to take compliments. You know, when my coach is like, "Okay, you got this move down pretty good. You're getting better," and I'm like, "Nah, I don't think so." And it's like, no, you got to believe it. Like Karam just said, you know, trust him. Trust the guy's a black belt. I'm assuming your coach is also a guy who's been doing this for a very long time. He's seen students, so he's not just saying things, right? Like he has context. He's like, I've seen guys. I know how it is. You're gonna get better. Just trust the process. And that's what I started to figure out. I'm like, okay, some days you got to go in there and think, I am good. I am the shit. Because if you go in there all the time thinking, oh man, I suck, you're gonna perform that way too. So there's a fine line between, you know, the overconfidence, confidence, humility, and you got to find that, gauge that in, you know, every training. And I think that's like the mental practice when it comes to martial arts.
Well put.
Yeah, I kind of have I always have the issue of going in. It's like I'm either like hyper confident in myself, and then I wind up doing shit, or I'm like really unconfident, and then I do better than expected, and it always kind of goes back and forth.
Yeah. So speaking of Indian or India, I had an Indian roommate, and he taught me how to deal with that. What he said is when things are super high and going super well, back off. Stop putting energy into it. Don't keep juicing that shit. Stop it. And then what it does is it saves your energy. And then when things are going really, really low, you have energy left over. You can raise yourself out of the gutter. So what ends up because when things are going well, what we all like to do is we want to keep it going. We overstimulate it. We want it to never end. We're addicts. We're fucking addicts. But then when it's like shit, you got no energy. You used all your turbo boost, all your backup, your nitrous, you used anything you had to overdo it when it was going well. You have nothing left. So when it goes low, you're just ripping through the gutter. You can't get your head above fucking the ground. You're just being just trashed and thrashed. So what you do is you hold back when it's doing well, which sounds like nuts because that's what addiction sounds like. To break addiction sounds nuts. And now you have all this energy. So I tried it for a few months just on a feeling tip, and it was the most remarkable thing. I got way more stuff done. I trusted myself and felt better about myself all the time. In your context, it's only theoretically different. You're feeling really good, and you know you don't do as well because you know you're so mentally high, but it's not attached to your physicality. And then when you're feeling really low, you're actually humble and do better than you think. But you could still apply the same thing. So when you're feeling really, really high, just let go a little bit and be like, yeah, I feel like $1 million. Okay, oh well, I know that's not always true. And then when you feel like shit, you could say, I feel like I'm $1 million in debt. But you know what? I know that's also not always true. And so just let go of both the high and the low, and you'll find a more even keel way to do progress. And then you might be able to let your coach affect you a little bit.
Okay. I'll jump in the last two here, and then we'll just freely discuss stuff. Okay. Glance at negatives, but focus on positives. Automobiles come equipped with negative indicators placed directly in front of the driver to tell you when the battery is not charging, when the engine's becoming too hot, when the oil pressure is becoming too low, etc. To ignore these negatives might ruin your car. However, there's no need to become unduly upset if some negative signal flashes. You merely stop at a service station or a garage and take positive action to correct it. A negative signal does not mean the car is no good at all. All cars overheat sometimes. However, the driver of the automobile does not look at the control panel exclusively and continuously. To do so might be disastrous. He must focus his gaze through the windshield, look where he is going, and keep his primary attention on his goal, where he wants to go. He merely glances at the negative indicators from time to time. When he does not fix upon them or dwell upon them. He quickly focuses his sight ahead of him and concentrates on the positive goal of where he wants to go. That's a good metaphor to use about men that are chasing some long-term life goals, or just goals in general, like losing weight, gaining muscle, things of that nature, getting a job full-time, graduating college, whatever it is. You're going to hit roadblocks along the way of every single goal you set. But just like this metaphor says, don't fixate on them. It's simply something something, you course correct and move forward. Like the end game, the end goal, the end picture, whatever it is in your mind, is all that you're focused on. Everything else is merely something you correct for when it comes up. Don't dwell on negatives, guys. Super important, because those will zap the energy, the discipline, and the motivation from you if you're chasing something that requires a significant portion of your life, like being healthy forever. That's a lifestyle, but you may run across some bumps. Maybe you get a broken arm or something. You go through a little bout of bad health. That doesn't mean you spiral out of control and make things worse for yourself. You are still the healthy person you were before. You're still the active person you were before. And this is just a mere bump in the road, and you're going to get back to the active life once all these pass, right? It's only when you start to focus on the negatives and let them derail your goals is when there are actual huge problems. So don't fall into that. That's a trap in life. And the last one here says how to use negative thinking. We should adopt a somewhat similar attitude about our own negative symptoms. I'm a firm believer in negative thinking when used correctly. We need to be aware of negatives so that we can steer clear of them. A golfer needs to know when or where the bunkers and sand traps are, but he doesn't think continuously about the bunker when he doesn't want to go or where he doesn't want to go. His mind glances at the bunker but dwells upon the green. Used correctly, this type of negative thinking can work for us to lead us to success. If 1, we are sensitive to the negative to the extent that it can alert us to danger. 2, we recognize the negative for what it is, something undesirable, something we don't want, something that does not bring genuine happiness. And 3, we take immediate corrective action and substitute an opposite positive factor from the success mechanism. Such practice will in time create a sort of automatic reflex that becomes a part of the inner guidance system. Negative feedback will act as a sort of automatic control to help us steer clear of failure and guide us to success. So that's basically becoming conscious of the fact that when your mind starts to derail itself and you get overly emotional or negative, or doubt creeps in, or any other sort of negative, that you automatically by default understand what's happening and wire yourself positively. Like you may be attempting to do something like ride a bike through the woods, and you're afraid of the trail. You don't know what the trail is like. You think you're going to fall. You think you're going to hurt yourself. All that's bullshit. You have to completely take control consciously in that moment and say, hold on. I'm here doing what I want to do. I'm really excited. I'm nervous. I know my mind is playing tricks on me, but I've been working at this for a long time, and I'm so excited to get on this trail that I've never been on. I can't wait to rip it. The thought of I'm going to fall, break my neck, going to hit a tree, that's all imagined. Nothing has happened like that. If something like that were to happen, you'll deal with it then. But it's...
The worst part is I can speak from personal experience with some of the guys I ride with.
Yes,
those thoughts lead to that happening.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
As soon as they start thinking like that, that's exactly what happens. Not even 5 seconds into it. Like they're on the ground bleeding. It's hilarious.
Yeah, the soul attracts that which it harbors. So if you are harboring negative thoughts, or you speak negatively about yourself, like you subconsciously will move automatically in that direction. So think about.
Although I haven't given up on him yet, I might actually get him to go to an actual bike park. I'm still working on him. It's been 2 years.
Cliff diving
is telling himself he's going to die.
He won't. Yeah, it's just his mind. But cliff diving is one simple one I could tell everyone about that they could relate to, because the fear of heights is natural in most people. Watching people cliff dive, if you fully believe and commit to the jump, 100% of the time you will be okay. It's the people that doubt themselves, get into their heads, and you see them want to step off, then come back. Almost step off, then come back. It's those people, by the time they jump, they're so full of doubt and negative thoughts that they don't commit fully to the jump. Halfway, they bail, freak out, and splat, hit the water in the worst way ever. Belly flop, back flop, and then they end up getting hurt, as opposed to just penciling straight in, just fully committing.
Same thing with hitting a jump on a mountain bike.
Yep.
It's so they freeze up and freak out and crash.
You guys are solid. You guys are great. There's an in-between step that is not like there. Maybe you guys are so good at what you do, you don't understand there's an in-between step. So in the Isle of Man for motorcycle racing, the guys die all the time on their motorcycles, right? It's one of the wildest races in the world. And there's a teaching. Cool. Okay, right on. So we're connected. So there's a teaching that says when you ride your motorcycle on a racetrack, you can be like 1% away from crashing, and it's not too bad. So what racers do that is really awesome on a racetrack where it's generally safe to crash, they bring their bike to the edge of crashing, and in a turn they purposefully go over the edge and crash on purpose. So they know exactly where the edge is. They just slide out. It's safe typically, and now they know where the edge is. And what they do is they'll create a space in their mind, aka where's the crash or where is death. So they know where the crash is, they know where death is, and they create a particular margin away from that. And then that margin is tighter on a racetrack, or sorry, it's loose, it's closer on a racetrack. So they could be like a few percent away from it, that's fine. And then on the road, you want to have maybe more like a 10 or 15% margin away from where the death zone or crash zone is. And so when I go out riding on my bike, and I do dangerous shit every day, I think about dying every single time I ride. I continuously think about dying. I've never crashed ever. I've been riding for over 20 years. So what I'm doing is I'm looking at where death is and I'm going, cool, let me keep a margin. Let me keep a margin. And then sometimes I go, fuck it, I don't care. I roll dice and I go right into the death zone because I don't care. And I just roll dice.
Well, that
so
works
I think
for
what you guys are
motorcycling.
doing,
Well, that works specifically for motorcycling because that has more to do with situational awareness. Because I ride too, and I know what it's like when you're on a bike. Any little thing could kill you. A pebble could kill you. You know. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah, I almost flew off a cliff one day.
Yeah, the
on a
margin of
motorcycle.
death is razor thin on a motorcycle, especially at speed. So to have like that maintained consistent self-awareness keeps you alive. But something like jumping off a 10-foot, 15, 20-foot cliff into the water is not life-threatening ever, but it becomes extremely painful when you don't commit fully to jumping in feet first and penciling in. Like the bike is different because it's certain death if you crash. But
so,
the people.
So what I'm saying is,
Yes.
what I'm saying is that when people are looking at where we could take the death zone or the crash zone and relabel it extreme pain, and then then you're there. So if I go into my death zone and I don't say fuck it and roll dice, now I'm committed. When I say fuck it, roll dice, I'm in my death zone. I'm fully committed. I don't give a fuck what happens. I'm not holding back at all. And everything's just, I'm completely zoned out, completely wild. So that's the feeling that, let's say in diving, those people aren't going into.
Almost,
like they need to go into their
you're close.
into their own death zone.
Here's the example that would give you a great one-to-one to yours.
Okay.
So professional cliff divers will systematically jump from higher and higher and higher, and that's their limit. It's the example you gave with the riders professionally getting closer and closer and closer to the point of failure, and then they know their exact limits. So the professional cliff divers will go higher and higher, higher to the absolute limit. It could only be 5 feet at a time, but they begin to feel the point of failure where like this hurts. Like even a straight perfect fall is painful here. I'm reaching my limit. Any mistake leads to death. So they're training themselves to see where the limit is so that when they're jumping, they're more comfortable there at the edge. That's what the riders are doing on the track. When they're practicing, they're going to the absolute edge and failing, seeing where the failure is, because come race time, the margins are much thinner. They're going full speed, everything. Guys are super competitive. You don't want to give up time, all that stuff, but they know exactly where the point of failure is. So professional cliff divers do the same. I think what we're talking about would be like, imagine an amateur rider that's afraid, overthinking to just throttle the bike fully and then starts to like fucking tank slap and shit from the nervous hands shaking. You know, it's like, bro, you're just overthinking it. Just feather the throttle. You go fast. You don't have to start shaking everywhere. It's like the overthinking that people do, the negative thoughts in their head, is how they end up crashing and shit. You know, like they'll freak out and they maybe grab the clutch or the brake and then they end up flipping over their bike because they're so nervous overthinking. That's more of like a one-to-one.
No, that's exactly what I was referring to. Like, you know, because
there's a remedy.
They'll sit there and they'll tell themselves over and over again that they're going to crash.
Yeah,
and then as soon as they hit the jump, they tense up and just fail.
Yeah,
we know what the problem is. The remedy's already been written. What you do is you add a larger margin. That's all you do is you add a larger margin and have the person acclimate to the larger margin.
Yeah,
I agree. But
it's
trying to get them to that point, that's the struggle.
That's the
trying
problem.
to get them to that point where they can actually be able to do that smaller jump.
Exactly.
Like start off here, just focus on this one instead of trying to do all of it.
Yeah.
Well, they're being ridiculous. Like if you put let's say the pain margin's like 1%, put 30% on it, put 50% on it. Make it.
But you have to think
like
it's
a child's
ridiculous.
play.
But it's ridiculous ridiculous to you, but remember what the book said. Like, this is how they operate internally. It's a failure mechanism. Like, their brain runs off on them. So to you, it's 1%. Bro, stop being ridiculous. It's a fucking baby jump. They're thinking, fuck, if I go to the bottom, what if I break my ankles? What if I drown? I can't see the bottom. What if I hit something? You know, like, their brain is wired so, I don't want to say weird, but in a negative failure mechanism type of way, that this is what's holding them back in life in general. So me and you are looking at the guy scared to feather the throttle and just go a little fast, and then he grabs the fucking brake and flips over his bike because he's scared he just picked up too much speed. You know, and it's like, bro, what are you doing?
Especially if they have previous failures to worry over.
Yeah, but I don't have. So that you guys are way ahead. You guys are way better than me. See, like your starting points. My starting point was so low. Like, I was so abused, beaten, and inside and out. So when I started to learn to do anything, I had extreme fear for all things, and I've overcome all that. And what it was when I think of someone like they got no courage for throttle, I just say, cool, throttle 1%. Only put 1% throttle on it. And they go, well, that's nothing. I go, okay, well then do nothing. Show me nothing. And then they have a breakthrough. Then I go, okay, let's try 5%. And if they're a little nervous, I go, good, I'm glad. Now you get to practice courage.
But they're where you used to be. You're seeing it live on them. Yeah.
And like I said,
so I don't mind
on my body for
baby
2 years
steps.
now.
Yeah.
2 years,
well,
and I've almost gotten to the point of actually going to a park and just rolling some of the jumps. You don't have to jump them, just roll them.
So you could have them, like, I don't know if you guys are allowed to do that at your park. Get off the bicycle and walk the course. Once the mind is clear, then walk the course, walk it forwards, walk it backwards, sit and just stare at a jump for 10 minutes and just relax your mind and work and breathe out all your fears. So what I'm suggesting, very few people ever do.
Exactly.
It's called the mastery.
You're preaching to the choir. I get it.
Yeah,
we know.
It's the mastery process. So
it's just seeing it live is different. When they're right on the edge, bro, it becomes real to them, and then the fear takes over. That's the problem. It's the fear takes over when they're at the edge, But everybody else watching is like, bro, you'll be fine. Don't freak out. Proceeds to freak out, you know. But this is like a mental trick.
The pickup artistry does the same thing, where they have someone say, just go to a bar, sit there for a half hour, notice everything's okay with the room, and leave. Now you do that for a week or 3. Now go there and just say hi. Just say hi to girls. Hi. Try that for a week or 3. Now start your opener. If you go slower, you'll end up way farther ahead. So if someone's dealing with fear, you could say, hey man, just like, don't think about it. Good luck. If that works for them, great. But otherwise you have to do like a deconditioning and more of a meditative process, or you can't ice pick into their mind. It'll take 10 times longer. It takes 10 times longer.
That's why you recommend this book to them.
Right.
I've actually given him this book. I doubt he's read it though.
Of course.
Yeah, and there's another book called Don't Shoot the Dog, and it explains how to incrementally increase behavior, courageous behavior.